Good morning or good day, wherever you might be, and welcome to our study of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's commentary on Shantideva's The Way of the Bodhisattva, you could say quintessential Mahayana instruction, presenting the path of what we call the paramitas, the vehicle that takes us entirely beyond any kind of dualistic clinging or fixation. And as an expression of that also, naturally, there's the abandoning of nirvana. There's the abandoning of a private project of, I will go into a spiritual peace. And so you very often see in Buddhist liturgy where the aspirations are, may I go beyond samsara and nirvana, or sometimes we say, I vow to go beyond existence and peace, meaning going beyond the habitual delusion that perpetuates the sense of existence for a sentient being, and the aspiration of peace, which is really still premised on the same project of self. And that's where the Bodhisattva vows never to enter into such a space of just individual peace. So that's where the way of the Bodhisattva is, on one hand, it's an exceptional, marvelous guide toward ethical behavior, ethical practice in the sense of going beyond ego. And also, it's an exceptional presentation of the vast vision of the Mahayana, which goes way beyond the ordinary assumptions that very often are associated with the project of the spiritual path. So we have on one hand a very pragmatic presentation, and at the same time also a very radical presentation. The topic extends very, very far. So really, in the way of the Bodhisattva, we have not only some incredibly important and provocative perspectives presented, but we also have it presented in a very, you could say, pithy format. So, so presently then, looking at His Holiness's commentary, or actually before we do that, we'll do what His Holiness suggests and what really one should do in the context of any kind of study, Buddhist study, actually preceded with invoking the principles of wisdom, taking refuge, developing bodhicitta. Anyway, here, just simply, you could say, chanting the quintessential statement with regards to the objective of the Buddhist path, and also then the statement from the Prajnaparamita, which really highlights what is the nature of our reality. And then we take refuge and develop bodhicitta. So abandon evil doing, practice virtue well, subdue your mind. This is the Buddha's teaching. Like a star, an optical illusion or a flame, a magical illusion, a dewdrop or a bubble, like a dream, a flash of lightning or a cloud, so should one consider all compounded things. In the jewels of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, we take refuge until we attain enlightenment. By the merit of practicing generosity and the like, may we attain Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. In the jewels of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, we take refuge until we attain enlightenment. By the merit of practicing generosity and the like, may we attain Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. In the jewels of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, we take refuge until we attain enlightenment. By the merit of practicing generosity and the like, may we attain Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. And like I think I've mentioned before here, where it says, by the merit of practicing generosity and the like, that actually means practicing the paramita path. So it's not just that there's sort of generosity and then there's, things like that. It's very precise. And it refers then to discipline, patience, endeavor, concentration, and wisdom. And these really, within these six, we sum up the entire Mahayana path to enlightenment, which of course also serves as the foundation of the Vajrayana. So this line there covers really vast, you could say, scope. And it's on the basis of that vast path then that we aspire that we may attain Buddhahood and benefit sentient beings. So today it's going to be a short session. If you notice the exotic backdrop here, I'm going to be leading a practice of Tara afterwards, according to Chögyal Dzogchen Lingpa's what's called the Profound Essence of Tara practice. So that's going to be starting at 10 when we normally stop. And I might need a little bit of time before that to prepare. So, so I think we'll do approximately, let's see how we go, half an hour or something today. And also today we are touching on two really big topics. One is patience, where inevitably, despite everything that's actually being said in the teaching, very often people are led to believe that patience means that you should become an impassive doormat. That's not the case. But the issue of patience is that we're keeping our cool. So whatever we need to do, we might need to be, assertive in various ways, but it's about not being, you could say, swayed by anger, aversion, and keeping a fundamental sympathy, whether it's our computer that's not working, or whether it's an obnoxious person, or whether it's some politician that is completely responsible for messing up, you could say, the planet in an absolute, ridiculously irresponsible and ignorant way. Whatever it is, we need to understand that there is, first of all, there's in our role in interacting with particular challenges and situations, there's no help from being angry. Could be an insight that something needs to be done, but that insight needn't be tainted by the rather weakness that comes when we're also, this insight is laced with affliction, with a toxic sense of deep solidity with regards to self, and also deep solidity with regards to the object. And so we're also going to look at how the object intrinsically doesn't have the solidity that we attribute to it. This is a big topic. And then in that discussion also, it goes into the refutation of the belief that there is some solid, permanent phenomena out there. So these are obviously intimately linked, but there's some refutations there in terms of the middle way refutation of the belief in creator, belief in solid existence of our subjective experiences. So these are rather big topics, and in a way, the last thing I'd like to do is rush through these. The Buddhist argumentation is so sharp with regards to these that usually it's just like tum, 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 and then it's gone. And if we're not used to these kind of ways of thinking, if we're still thinking, but wait, hey, hold on, isn't there still somebody out there? Isn't there still something? Then these arguments, they don't really land anywhere. And this is where very often you have situations in which great teachers, they will be sitting and roaring with laughter, saying, how could a non-existent cause ever produce an existent result? And it actually doesn't mean anything to the audience. It doesn't. I say this because for the last many years, I've been charged with to some extent translating and also later presenting Madhyamika teaching. And I know where we in the modern audience, where we're coming from. And so often you could say the sophistication and the sharpness of the logic is lost on us. There's places where the Western mind is very sharp. But there's also places where when it comes to ontology and phenomenology and well, not even that, rather logic, what we can call epistemology, what it is that validates insight and what doesn't. There, the Buddhists are very sharp, very sophisticated, to the degree that it's right up there with math. So there's, in general, if we conventionally say 2 + 2 is 4, there's not much sort of debate around it. Of course, you might, in the case of, what's his name, Gödel and other great thinkers, you might sort of find an inconsistency in some of the premises of math. But apart from that, then generally we can understand some aspects of math and we can understand some logic. But the logic that applies to understanding person and reality, as it's often refuted in the middle way teaching, very often is lost on the audience. Of course, I take responsibility for that and say that might just be me who's struggling with these issues. So in that case, please just have patience with me. But sometimes sort of talking about these topics with friends, it does seem to emerge that some of these topics are not that often sort of, you could say, understood on the terms of what they really are intended. Because what really we're intending with the middle way teaching, with the teaching on dependent arising and emptiness, etc., is really just to free the mind from a burden. It's really just freeing the mind. It's completely consistent with the Lojong teachings on developing a softer, kinder mind. It's really just intended for us to see, actually, hey, what you thought was there is not there, you know? And that's where there's a real beauty in this. There's a real openness. But the logic and the argumentation sometimes is very sharp. And what it does also, it goes into the opposition's own premises and it's basically expose what you can call a circular logic. But that supposes that you're already familiar with the, you could say, opponent's positions. And that's where a lot of the Madhyamika gets lost when all of a sudden there's a long teaching on what a particular school of Indian thought thinks and so on. There's references to it here, yeah? And that's where it just doesn't land in a place that the general modern audience, they actually they can connect. So, I would say let's just take our time with one thing at a time in this regard with the middle way teaching. Oh, can't wait for the Tara Puja. Oh dear. Well, you're gonna have to wait a little bit. Might it help to add all 6 to the prayer as a more concise reminder? I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, so let's look at the text. And the first is, like I said, we're in the chapter of patience, which is so important because patience really is what destroys us. It destroys us. It destroys others. We all know what it's like to be at the receiving end of belligerent people. If we're around angry people, belligerent people that focus their anger on us, we know how it frightens us, how we get scared, and how very often, because of the impact of that, then afterwards for years, we very often said, you know, I encountered I had this experience of someone who was angry, and this has really shaped my present moment. Of course, we can say that's really not highly likely, but at the same time, it's very much part of the way we psychologize our experience, particularly in this culture. So that's where these memories, they very often attain great significance. And that's where we can see anger is such a negative thing. It's such a toxic thing. So it's very important that we don't, what very often happens is if the persons have been angry at us, then we're angry at others. And so it continues. And very often you can sort of look at almost like, you know, in terms of, again, psychology, you can look at this generationally, that, you know, down through the ages, then these things have been perpetuated. And of course, it's part of the samsaric condition, but hence also it's really important that the buck stops with us. And that's where we need to see through the hoax that has perpetuated that. And so we identify in the Buddhist teaching that anger is the worst of the worst in terms of just destroying our peace of mind, destroying the peace of mind of others. And that's where it's not about us all of a sudden shutting up. It's not about us all of a sudden not saying rude things to others. It's not about us not acting in ways where we get things moving or where we, you could say, want to correct wrongs and so on. That's not a question at all. And this is the point I was making earlier also. Patience doesn't mean that we become doormats or vegetables, but it means that we don't lose our cool, that we don't fall for anger, because anger are not the words. Anger are not the actions. Anger is this sense inside where we become uptight, and you can see it in faces when we can see it in our own face, and we can see it in others' faces. When there's anger, we retract. We we retract into this space of just solidity, and the self becomes very vivid. And this is brilliant, because that's where we might think, oh yeah, no self, that's easy. But actually we can really see we have a strong sense of self. And that's the issue. It's not about what we say or what we do, completely beside the point. But it's that place where we retract into a strong, solid knot. And then also at that time, we look at the other and see the other as a problem. We look at a circumstance. It might be the computer that's not working, or we might be struggling with something. And that's where we retract into this place, and the object, whatever it is, our problem or the issue or the other person or sort of circumstances, we have this sense of resistance, resentment, anger, overwhelm, and that solidifies this self, and it solidifies other. And that's where we're perpetuating something that's deeply uncreated. We can see when we have confidence, where there's a problem, but we have confidence, let's say that, first time I drove an automatic car, I put the car into gear, and then I tried to turn the ignition, and then it didn't work. And all of a sudden I realized you actually have to put it into park before you turn the ignition. So that's where you could say there's someone next to me who was saying, you need to do this. And it wasn't like that was a big problem. There's a problem and there's a solution. And if there's confidence, then we just deal with that very simply. So that's when the difference between us having confidence and being, you could say, large, and then retracting into this little iron knot of anger, there's a huge difference. And we'd have to be very alienated to ourselves if we're not aware that that takes place. This is where you could say the spiritual path lies. It's working with these kind of things. Forget about sort of, nirvana and all that kind of stuff, like Trungpa Rinpoche says, the hypothetical attainment of enlightenment. We need to actually work with, again, what he would refer to as the kitchen sink. And that's where these kind of dynamics that can be so toxic, they really are what we need to have at the forefront in terms of our spiritual path. So just picking up, we're actually on the top of the page here where His Holiness says, people rarely get angry if they are confident in what they're doing. Anger comes more easily in moments of confusion. And that's where it's workable. We can actually get the jump on this. And this is also where, like with martial arts or anything, we need to train first. It's not like we can say, hey, I've just done a course on patience in Buddhism. Now, then when difficult situations come up, hey, it should work. It doesn't work like that. It's about us actually meditating. It's about us actually putting effort into this, that this is something that really occupies us. This is something that sort of preoccupies our mind. And that's where very often, we just drift, particularly in the modern age. We're eager to be entertained, distracted, and this sort of spiritual thing, yeah, we'll do that every once in a while. And hey, by the way, patience didn't work. Nah, didn't work. So that sort of thing, that's where having approaching this doesn't really work if we just have a superficial relationship with it. So then here comes then Shantideva with the argumentation. And this is very much about, looking at some of our assumptions and seeing actually their lack of validity. So he says, I'm not angry with my bile and other humans, fertile source of suffering and pain. So we have all sorts of physical, you could say, conditions that could very well bring suffering and pain. So why should living beings give offense? They likewise are impelled by circumstance. So that's why if we look at others, who behave in a way that we might disagree with, we might be offended, but they're really just driven by particular circumstances. You know, we have maybe some politician that we're upset with, and we might say, oh yes, so and so, and we have names for these people. They have names. And they have careers, history, and there's every, like it's almost against everybody to say, the thing about relative truth is that it's so convincing. So yes, but the thing is, they are driven by circumstances. They're driven by their particular place where they were born, their particular psychological disposition. And while they are endlessly changing on the basis of causes and conditions, they also might be committed to a particular belief system that turns them into then what we perceive as a solid something or somebody out there. So that's why should we actually be upset when we can see that such circumstances are just created by various conditions? Just like within our own body, there's various conditions also that create suffering and pain. So His Holiness comments, suffering may result from both animate and inanimate causes. We may curse inanimate things like the weather, but it is with animate beings that we most often get angry. So of course we could sort of like, damn the rain, you know. It's, yeah, I'm trying to speak and then there's loud rain. Why? You know? But of course, actually I don't. I just think, well, this isn't, you know, just stay focused. And the thing is, we don't really blame the weather, not seriously. But then we do blame, you know, the politicians, yeah, or we blame the people in our lives that, you know, wreak havoc in one way or another. So like His Holiness says, it's with animate beings that we most often get angry. Yeah, I mean, maybe not you guys, but you know, just talking from my own experience here. If we analyze these animate causes that make us unhappy, we find that they are themselves influenced by other conditions. They are not making us angry simply because they want to. It's not as if the whole world has sort of gotten together and had a big meeting and decided, you know, we're going to make life difficult for so-and-so, or even that persons, as they sort of go out in their day, first thing in the morning, they say, well, I'm going to upset so-and-so. It's more that pursuing particular ideas, particular being subject to particular habits, you know. Let's say that we call up the electrician, and the electrician hasn't slept much. The electrician couldn't really be bothered. The electrician wants to go home, and the electrician does a shoddy job, and then bills us, you know. And the thing is, the electrician doesn't think, I'm going to really annoy Jakob. I'm going to just get it where it hurts. I'm going to do a shoddy job at his broken sort of electric circuits, and then I'm going to bill him really a lot. See, there's not that to start with, highly unlikely. But you see, regardless of what there is, even if there was that, that would be driven by, first of all, a sense of self. And that self drove maybe the person to stay up late the night before, drinking heavily, or worried by financial, you know, conditions, then needing to charge a lot of money, having too much work, or again, for the same reasons, taking too many jobs, not having time, or maybe just being a lazy person, or maybe just being distracted, or maybe thinking about something else while doing the job. All of these things, you could say, add up to a set of circumstances. And that's where we very often say, you know, I won't listen to your excuses. But very often, what excuses are just when people try to explain the complexity of particular issues. The point is, what essentially is happening is that all of us individually, from our own perspective, we operate from a sense of self. And so the electrician has his agenda, I have my agenda, and they obviously conflict. But that's what's behind. That's behind the actual external gross, whatever it is, you know, bad job with the electrical circuit, the cost, etc. Behind that is all these, you could say, complex conditions that are unseen but subtle, that really rule it. And behind those, again, is the fundamental ignorance that thinks I. And so we have me who's sitting here, you did a shoddy job and you charge me a lot. And the other person is I did my very best and I have to charge that. And so the camps sit there, but they both are fueled by a strong, that little knot again, where there's a sense of I. And that's where the real issue here lies. And that's the basis for sentient being suffering, is this belief in an I. And that is where we need to get to the bottom of that. And that's where the Buddha says, actually, this whole belief in an I is really, it's a delusional condition. There is no I. There's a lack of awareness, and there's a pattern that has developed on the basis of this lack of awareness, this mindlessness, this unconsciousness, and that patterning perpetuates a particular cycle. But it's a place where we believe that it's very real, and so we keep perpetuating it. And that is what we presently are dealing with. We need to stop perpetuating it, and we need to get to the bottom of it. So, of course, on one hand, we need to have patience. And that's where we need to see where there's an innocence in taking place on the basis of this fundamental ignorance. So it's not like there's somebody there who particularly is out to get us, or even if there is, there's a fundamental ignorance taking place. And that's where we, understanding that, then we can actually cultivate patience. That's why the patience is the sage. That's why the sage is somebody who's patient, not because the sage has suppressed everything, you know. What is it? Somebody was quoting Woody Allen. He says, "I don't get angry. I just develop a cancer tumor or something like that." You know, that's where we think, oh yeah, being patient means we're gonna block up ourselves, and then eventually we're gonna explode like a pressure cooker. And that's not the implication here. That's when that's when we only look at behavior, and when we're completely oblivious to what's behind it, and also we're oblivious to the fact that there is no solid underlying self. So there is some very vast perspectives that apply here. But the last thing we're talking about is just sort of, how do you say, suppressing anything. It's just seeing through some basic assumptions. So that's where His Holiness continues with regards to, let me just, where he says, they're not making us angry simply because they want to. In this respect, because they're influenced by other conditions, they are in fact powerless. So there is no need to get angry with them. So Shantideva says, never thinking, now I will be angry. People are impulsive, caught up in anger. Irritation likewise comes, though never plans to be experienced. All defilements of whatever kind, the whole variety of evil deeds are brought about by circumstances. None is independent, none autonomous. Conditions, once assembled, have no thought that they will now give rise to some result, nor does that which is engendered think that it has been produced. So we can simply just see there are sets of conditions. It's not as if that we sort of get angry thinking, now I will be angry. We're just not that cool. When we're really talking about anger, it's just something that comes up with a force, like the Tibetans talk about the red wind of anger. And that happens without any kind of planning. Today at around 11:30, I'll get angry. That sort of thing doesn't happen. So similarly also with irritation. And we need to understand that what is taking place in situations are circumstances, sets of circumstances that don't particularly come with their own independent agenda or thought. It's just a set of causes and conditions. I'm going to leave it at that. Any questions? The next part will be essentially the refutation of any validation of a sense of solid individual self in the highest degree, the sense of Atman, sense of some cosmic self. There's a refutation there, and that's where we're going to sort of be drawing a little bit on middle way reasoning, so we'll leave that to next time. But as far as patience goes, yeah. Okay. Okay, well, look, you've all very patiently endured my lecture on patience. So thank you. So maybe we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. I hope it makes sense though. I'd like to, someone like me, I can't really present what a guru has, which is, just the mere presence of the guru and everybody becomes peaceful, right? I have to actually do what we do in the general Buddhist tradition, is actually make, valid reasons for it. That's what I can present here, valid reasons. I'm afraid I cannot come with the blessing that sort of pacifies all anger, but I can sort of repeat really what the Buddhist science of mind has presented down over the ages. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, there's Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he recognized this, but then it does need to be resolved.
Yeah, so when we have the shoddy electrician and the situation that needs to be dealt with, then we need to do that. But we need to do it without anger. That's the thing. We need to do it without anger. And that's where, like I started off saying, and that I'm always repeating, we're not talking about behavior. We're not talking about what we're doing or not doing. We're talking about that place. And that's why I went to some length to describe there's a place inside us. We have to be very alienated to ourselves if we don't recognize there's a place inside us that sort of tightens up. I don't know if maybe I'm the only one I don't think I'm the only one who has that. You see, when I get angry, there's something inside me that goes tight. Then that's the issue. It's not about telling the electrician what to do. And, we could, there's various ways to deal with it. But we also notice we become very ineffective. When that tightness takes place, we lose our intelligence. And that's where, whatever the situation is, we do it badly. And so the issue is anger. The issue is not what we say with our mouth or do. We might need to be assertive in one way or another. We're not talking about becoming soft-spoken. We're not talking about getting from A to B. We're talking about that uptightness that takes place within ourselves. Anyway, this I hope is clear. We're talking about a dimension which is unseen within ourselves. That I think if we look in our mind, we experience that. We must know it. There must be a place where we know that we have something inside ourselves, that where there's a strong sense of I, and then there's also a strong sense of the other. Anyway, it's a big one, and it's definitely patience is not about becoming a doormat, all of a sudden just saying, oh yeah, you did a shoddy job, well that's all right. We're never talking about that. Clarification regarding the prayer question. Might it help as a reminder to include all 6 parameters instead of shortening it to generosity? Yeah, I've had the same thought actually. Maybe yeah. It's interesting actually. Okay, very clear, very useful. Okay, good. Sounds like Shenpa. Yes, that's right. It's a Shenpa. It's a Shenpa around self, and it's a Shenpa around other, in the sense that we hold on to, and you very often have, when, for example, the shoddy electrician, then afterwards people will, at their dinner table, they'll sit and say, hey, did you hear what happened? And they'll regurgitate the story. So there's no doubt that experience settles in the mind and becomes something that is substantiated by memory and by, you could say, by perpetuation of these sort of regurgitating narratives. Yeah, I feel it too. You become tight, you lose awareness, and there is a physical sensation of anxiety. It has a snowball effect. Yeah. So yes, so for us to work with patients, I think we first actually need to identify anger. There has to be a sense of anger, and we have to actually have some awareness of the toxicity of it, that it's a problem. And that's why I started off saying we ourselves might have been at the receiving end of anger ourselves. Some people, they talk about how in the past they were subject to angry outbursts from other people and that they still remember that. So clearly we do have a knowledge of what anger is. We've seen it in others. And so most of us know what is anger and can see that it's not pleasant. You know, it's not fun. Okay, I think the point has been made anyway. Okay, so we'll conclude this time and we'll continue with this, with the looking at the notion of the ultimate self next time. Okay. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. Through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we are born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the holy gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life, thoroughly teaching the holy Dharma in this world. May we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together. Thank you. Just one last announcement. Actually, next Wednesday, there won't be a class. I'll send out a notification. But yeah, next Wednesday, no class. There will be a class the following Wednesday. So next Wednesday is, let's see here. Next Wednesday is the 20th, no class then, but we'll be back on the 27th. So next class will be October 27th. Okay, see you there.